This is the 7th day of the May 88 7-day retreat. We will read from 2 books. One is Krishnamurti's notebook, the other one is Krishnamurti to himself. The notebook contains entries made during 1961 in different countries, entries into diaries, and Krishnamurti to himself are transcriptions of tape recordings of what he spoke into the tape recorder 2 years before his death. Since this is copyrighted material, the tape will not be for sale. I think this first entry is made in India, I believe. Doesn't really matter. One can tell by the flora described if one is knowledgeable where these flowers grow. There is a red flower among the dark green leaves, and from the veranda you only see that. There are the hills, the red sand of the riverbeds, the big high banyan tree, and the many tamarins, but you only see that flower. It is so gay, so full of color. There is no other color. The patches of blue sky, the burning clouds of light, the violet hills, the rich green of the rice field, all these fade away, and only this wondrous color of that flower remains. It fills the whole sky and the valley. It will fade and fall away. It will cease, and the hills will endure. But this morning it was eternity, beyond all time and thought. It held all love and joy. There was no sentiment and romantic absurdities in it, nor was it a symbol of something else. It was itself, to die in the evening, but it contained all life. It was not something you reasoned out, nor was it a thing of unreason, some romantic fancy. It was as actual as those hills and those voices calling to each other. It was the complete meditation of life, and illusion exists only when the impact of fact ceases. That cloud so full of light is a reality whose beauty has no furious impact on a mind that is made dull and insensitive by influence, habit, and the everlasting search of security, for security. Security in fame, in relationship, in knowledge, destroys sensitivity, and deterioration sets in. That flower, those hills, and the blue restless sea are the challenges as nuclear bombs of life, and only the sensitive mind can respond to them totally. Only a total response leaves no marks of conflict, and conflict indicates partial response. The so-called saints and sannyasis have contributed to the dullness of mind and to the destruction of sensitivity. Every habit, repetition, rituals strengthened by belief and dogma, sensory responses, can be and are refined, but the alert awareness, sensitivity is quite another matter. Sensitivity is absolutely essential to look deeply within. This movement of going within is not a reaction to the outer. The outer and the inner are the same movement. They are not separate. The division of this movement as the outer and as the inner breeds insensitivity. Going within is the natural flow of the outer. The movement of the inner has its own action, expressed outwardly, but it is not a reaction of the outer. Awareness of this whole movement is sensitivity. There are only facts, not greater or lesser facts. The fact, the what is, cannot be understood when approached with opinions or judgments. Opinions, judgments then become the fact, and not the fact that you wish to understand. In pursuing the fact, in watching the fact, the what is, the fact teaches, and its teaching is never mechanical, and to follow its teachings, the listening, the observation must be acute. This attention is denied if there is motive for listening. Motive dissipates energy, distorts it. Action with a motive is inaction, leading to confusion and sorrow. Sorrow has been put together by thought, and thought feeding upon itself forms the I and the me. As a machine has life, so does the I and the me. A life which is fed by thought and feeling. Fact destroys this machinery. Belief is so unnecessary, as are ideals. Both dissipate energy, which is needed to follow the unfolding of the fact, the what is. Belief, like ideals, are escapes from the fact, and in escape, there is no end to sorrow. The ending of sorrow is the understanding of the fact from moment to moment. There is no system or method which will give understanding, but only a choiceless awareness of a fact. Meditation, according to a system, is the avoidance of the fact of what you are. It is far more important to understand yourself, the constant changing of the facts about yourself, than to meditate in order to find God, have visions, sensations, and other forms of entertainment. There is something curiously pleasant to walk alone along a path deep in the country, which has been used for several thousand years by pilgrims. There are very old trees along it, tamarind and mango, and it passes through several villages. It passes between green fields of wheat. It is soft underfoot, fine dry powder, and it must become heavy clay in the wet season. The soft, fine earth gets into your feet, into your nose and eyes. Not too much. There are ancient wells and temples and withering gods. The land is flat, flat as the palm of the hand, stretching to the horizon, if there is a horizon. The path has so many turns. In a few minutes it faces in all the directions of a compass. The sky seems to follow that path, which is open and friendly. There are few paths like that in the world, though each has its own charm and beauty. There is one, the editor says at Gstaad, that's in Switzerland, that goes through the valley, gently climbing between rich pasturage to be gathered for the winter to be given to the cows. That valley is white with snow, but then it was the end of the summer, full of flowers, with snow mountains all around, and there was a noisy stream going through the valley. There was hardly anything on that path, and you walked on it in silence. Then there is another path, editor says at Ojai, climbing steeply by the side of a dry, dusty, crumbling mountain. It was rocky, rough, and slippery. There wasn't a tree anywhere near, not even a bush. A quail with her small new brood, over a dozen of them, was there, and further up you came upon a deadly rattler, all curled up, ready to strike, but giving you a fair warning. But now this path was not like any other. It was dusty, made foul by human beings here and there were ruined old temples with their images. A large bull was having its fill among the growing grain, unmolested. There were monkeys too and parrots, the light of the skies. It was the path of 1,000 humans for many thousand years. As you walked on it, you were lost. You walked without a single thought, and there was the incredible sky and the trees with heavy foliage and birds. There is a mango on that path that is superb. It has so many leaves that the branches cannot be seen, and it is so old. As you walk on, there is no feeling at all. Thought too has gone, but there is beauty. It fills the earth and the sky, every leaf and blade of withering grass. It is there covering everything, and you are of it. You are not made to feel all this, but it is there. And because you are not, it is there, without a word, without a movement. You walk back in silence and fading light. Every experience leaves a mark, and every mark distorts experience. So there is no experience which has not been. Everything is old and nothing new. But this is not so. All the marks of all experiences are wiped away. The brain, the storehouse of the past, becomes completely quiet and motionless, without reaction, but alive, sensitive. Then it loses the past and is made new again. It was there, that immensity, having no past, no future. It was there without ever knowing the present. It filled the room, expanding beyond all measure. All of these recordings were made in Ojai in 1983. That's in California. It was really a most lovely, clear, beautiful morning. There was dew on every leaf, and as the sun rose slowly, quietly spreading over the beautiful land, there was great peace in this valley. The trees were full of oranges, small ones, but many. Gradually the sun lit every tree and every orange. When you sat on that veranda overlooking the valley, there were the long shadows of the morning. The shadow is as beautiful as the tree. We wanted to go out, not in the car, but out among the trees, smell the fresh air and the scent of many oranges and the flowers, and hear the sound of the earth. Later on, one climbed right to the very top of the hill, overlooking the wide valley. The earth doesn't belong to anyone. It is the land upon which all of us are to live for many years, plowing, reaping, and destroying. You are always a guest on this earth and have the austerity of a guest. Austerity is far deeper than only owning a few things. The very word austerity has been spoilt by the monks, by the sannyasis, by the hermits. Sitting on that high hill alone in the solitude of many things, many rocks and little animals and ants, that word has no meaning. Over the hills in the far distance was the wide, shining, sparkling sea. We have broken up the earth as yours and mine, your nation, my nation, your flag and his flag, this particular religion and the religion of the distant man. The world, the earth, is divided, broken up, and for it we fight and wrangle, and the politicians exult in their power to maintain this division, never looking at the world as a whole. They haven't got the global mind. They never feel nor ever perceive the immense possibility of having no nationality, no division. They can never perceive the ugliness of their power, their position, and their sense of importance. They are like you or another, only they occupy the seat of power with their petty little desires and ambitions, and so maintain, apparently, as long as man has been on this earth, the tribal attitude towards life. They do not have a mind that is not committed to any issue, to any ideals or ideologies, a mind that steps beyond the division of race, culture, and the religions that man has invented. Governments must exist as long as man is not a light to himself, as long as he does not live his daily life with order, care, diligently working, watching, learning. He would rather be told what to do. He has been told what to do by the ancients, by the priests, by the gurus, and he accepts their orders, their peculiar destructive disciplines, as though they were gods on this earth, as though they knew all the implications of this extraordinarily complex life. Sitting there, high above all the trees, on a rock that has its own sound like every living thing on the earth, and watching the blue sky, clear, spotless, one wonders how long it will take for man to learn to live on this earth without wrangles, wars, and conflict. Man has created the conflict by his division of the earth, linguistically, culturally, superficially. One wonders how long man, who has evolved through so many centuries of pain and grief, anxiety and pleasure, fear and conflict, will take to live a different way of life. As you sat quietly, without movement, a bobcat, a lynx, came down. As the wind was blowing up the valley, it was not aware of the smell of that human being. It was purring, rubbing itself against a rock, its small tail up, and enjoying the marvel of the earth. Then it disappeared down the hill among the bushes. It was protecting its lair, its cave, or its sleeping place. It was protecting what it needs, protecting its own kittens and watching for danger. It was afraid of man more than anything else. Man who believes in God, man who prays, the man of wealth with his gun, with his casual killing. You could almost smell that bobcat as it passed you by. You were so motionless, so utterly still, that it never looked at you. You were part of that rock, part of the environment. Why, one wonders, does man not realize that one can live peacefully, without wars, without violence? How long will it take him? How many centuries upon centuries to realize this? From the past centuries of 1,000 yesterdays, he has not learned. What he is now will be his future. It was getting too hot on that rock. You could feel the gathering heat through your trousers, so you got up and went down and followed the lynx, which had long since disappeared. There were other creatures, the gopher, the king snake, and a rattler. They were silently going about their business. The morning air disappeared. Gradually, the sun was in the west. It would take an hour or two before it set behind those hills, with a marvelous shape of the rock and the evening colors of blue and red and yellow. Then the night would begin. The night sounds would fill the air. Only late in the night would there be utter silence. The roots of heaven are of great emptiness. For in emptiness there is energy incalculable, vast and profound. It is a spring morning, a morning that has never been before and never will be again. It is a spring morning. Every little blade of grass, the camellias, the roses, all are blooming, and there is perfume in the air. It is a spring morning and the earth is so alive, and up in this valley all the mountains are green, and the tallest of them so extraordinarily vital, immovable and majestic. It is a morning that as you go along the path and look around at the beauty and the ground squirrels, every tender leaf of the spring is shining in the sun. Those leaves have been waiting for this whole winter and have just come out, tender, vulnerable. And without being romantic, imaginative, there is a feeling of great love and compassion. For there is so much beauty, incorruptible. There have been 1,000 spring mornings, but never such a morning as this. So still, so quiet, breathless. Perhaps it is with adoration, and the squirrels are out, and so are the lizards. It is a spring morning, and the air is festive. There are festivals all over the world because it is spring. The festivals are expressed in so many different ways, but that which is can never be expressed in words. Everywhere with the song and the dance, there is a deep feeling of spring. Why is it that we seem to be losing the highly vulnerable quality of sensitivity? Sensitivity to all the things about us, not only to our own problems and turmoils. To be actually sensitive, not about something, but just to be sensitive, to be vulnerable, like that new leaf which was born a few days ago to face storms, rain, darkness, and light. When we are vulnerable, we seem to get hurt. Being hurt, we withdraw into ourselves, build a wall around ourselves, become hard, cruel. But when we are vulnerable, without any ugly, brutal reactions, vulnerable to all the movements of one's own being, vulnerable to the world, so sensitive that there is no regret, no wounds, no self-imposed discipline, then there is the quality of measureless existence. We lose all this vulnerability in the world of noise and brutality, vulgarity, and the bustle of everyday life. To have one's senses sharpened, not any one particular sense, but to have all the senses fully awake, which does not necessarily mean to indulge, to be sensitive to all the movements of thought, the feelings, the pains, the loneliness, the anxiety. With those senses fully awakened, there's a different kind of sensation that goes beyond all the sensory or sensual responses. Have you ever looked at the sea or at those vast mountains, the Himalayas, which stretch from horizon to horizon? Have you ever watched a flower with all your senses? When there is such observation, there is no center from which you are observing. There is no me. The limited observation of one or two senses, breeds the egoistic movement. After all, we live by the senses, by sensation. And it is only when thought creates the image out of the sensation that all the complexities of desire arise. This morning, as you look down into the valley, seeing the extraordinary spread of green and the distant town, feeling the pure air, watching all the crawling things of the earth, watching without the interference of the images thought has built. Now the breeze is blowing from the valley up the canyon, and you turn as the path turns. Going down, there is a bobcat right in front of you, about 10 feet away. You can hear it purring, rubbing itself against a rock, the hair sticking out of its ears, its short tail, and extraordinary graceful movement. It is a spring morning for it too. We walked together down the path, and it was hardly making any noise except for its purring, highly enjoying itself, delighted to be out in the spring sunshine. It was so clean that its hair was sparkling. And as you watch it, the whole wild nature is in that animal. You tread on a dead branch which makes a noise, and it is off. It is off, not even looking behind it. That noise indicated man, the most dangerous of all animals. It is gone in a second among bushes and rocks, and all the joy has gone out of it. It knows how cruel man is, and it doesn't want to wait. It wants to be away, as far away as possible. It is a spring morning, and it is peaceful. Aware that a man was behind it a few feet away, that cat must have instinctively responded to the image of what man is. The man who has killed so many things, destroyed so many cities, destroyed culture after culture, ever pursuing his desires, always seeking some kind of security and pleasure. Desire, which has been the driving force in man, has created a great many pleasant and useful things. Desire also in man's relationships has created a great many problems and turmoils and misery. The desire for pleasure. The monks and the sannyasis of the world have tried to go beyond it, have forced themselves to worship an ideal, an image, a symbol. But desire is always there, like a flame burning. And to find out, to probe into the nature of desire, the complexity of desire, its activities, its demands, its fulfillments, ever more and more desire for power, position, prestige, status, the desire for the unnameable, that which is beyond all our daily life. That desire has made man do all kinds of ugly and brutal things. Desire is the outcome of sensation, the outcome with all the images that thought has built. And this desire not only breeds discontent, but a sense of hopelessness. Never suppress it, never discipline it, but probe into the nature of it. What is the origin, the purpose, the intricacies of it? To delve deep into it is not another desire, for it has no motive. It is like understanding the beauty of a flower, to sit down beside it and look at it. And as you look, it begins to reveal itself as it actually is. The extraordinarily delicate color, the perfume, the petals, the stem, and the earth out of which it has grown. So look at this desire and its nature without thought, which is always shaping sensations, pleasure and pain, reward and punishment. Then one understands, not verbally, not intellectually, the whole causation of desire, the root of desire, the very perception of it, the subtle perception of it, that in itself is intelligence. And that intelligence will always act sanely and rationally in dealing with desire. So, without too much talk this morning, without too much thinking, to be entirely enveloped by this spring morning, to live with it, to walk in it, is a joy that is beyond all measure. It cannot be repeated. It will be there until there is a knock on the door. It is a foggy morning. You can hardly see the orange trees, which are about 10 feet away. It is cold, and all the hills and the mountains are hidden, and there is dew on the leaves. It will clear up later. It is early morning yet, and the beautiful Californian sun and cool breeze will come a little later on. One wonders why human beings have always been so cruel, so ugly in their responses to any statement they don't like. Aggressive, ready to attack. This has been going on for thousands of years. One hardly ever meets nowadays a gentle person who is ready to yield, totally generous, and happy in his relationships. Last night there was the hooting of the owl. It was a great horned owl, it must be very large. And it waited for its mate to reply, and the mate replied from a distance, and the hoot went down into the valley, and you could hardly hear it. It was such a perfectly still night, dark and strangely quiet. Everything seems to live in order, in its own order. The sea with its tides, the new moon and the setting of the full moon, the lovely spring and the warmth of summer. Even the earthquake of yesterday has its own order. Order is the very essence of the universe, the order of birth and death, and so on. It is only man that seems to live in such disorder, confusion. He has lived that way since the owl began. Talking to the visitor sitting on the veranda with the red climbing rose and the young wisteria and the smell of the earth and the trees, it seemed such a pity to discuss disorder. When you look around at those dark hills and the rocky mountain and hear the whisper of a stream, which will soon be dry in summer, it all has such curious order that to discuss human disorder, human confusion and misery seems so utterly out of place. But there he is, friendly, knowledgeable, and probably given to thought. The mockingbird is on the telephone wire. It is doing what it generally does, flying into the air, circling and landing on the wire, and then mocking at the world. This it does so often, and the world apparently doesn't care, but the bird still mocks on. The fog is clearing, there is that spring sunshine, and the lizard is coming out, warming itself on the rock, and all the little things of the earth are busy. They have their order, they have their pleasure, amusement. They all seem to be so happy, enjoying the sunshine. No man ever hurt them to spoil their day. Now, quote, "If one may ask," the visitor began, What to you is the most important thing in life? What to you is the most essential quality that man must cultivate? And the response, if you cultivate as you cultivate the fields of the earth, then it is not the most essential thing. It must happen naturally, whatever happens. Naturally, easily, without any self-centered motives. The most important thing for each human being, surely, is to live in order, in harmony with all the things around him, even with the noise of the great towns, even with something that is ugly, vulgar, without letting it affect or alter the course of his life. Alter or distort the order in which she is living. Surely, sir, order is the most important thing in life, or rather, one of the most important. Why, he asks, should order be a quality of a brain that can act correctly, happily, precisely? Why should order be a quality of a brain that can act correctly, happily, precisely, he asks. And K, order is not created by thought. Order isn't something that you follow day after day, practice, conform to. As the streams join the sea, so the stream of order, the river of order, is endless. But that order cannot be there if there's any kind of effort, any kind of struggle to achieve, or to put aside disorder and slip into a routine, into various well-defined habits. All that is not order. Conflict is the very source of disorder, its very cause. And then the person says, everything struggles, doesn't it? Those trees, they have struggled to exist, struggled to grow. The marvelous oak there behind this house, it has withstood storms, years of rain and hot sunshine. It has struggled to exist. Life is conflict, it is turmoil, a storm. And you are saying, are you not, that order is a state in which there is no conflict. It seems almost impossible, like talking in a strange language, something utterly foreign to one's own life, one's own way of thinking. Do you, if I'm not impudent, live in order, in which there is no conflict whatsoever? Okay. Is it very important, sir, to find out if another is living without effort, without conflict? Or would you rather ask if you, as a human being who live in disorder, can find out for yourself the many causes? Or perhaps there's only one cause of this disorder. Those flowers know neither order nor disorder. They just exist. Of course, if they were not watered, looked after, they would die. And dying also is their order. The bright, hot sun will destroy them next month, and to them that is order. That's the end of the dialogue. The lizard has warmed itself on the rock and is waiting for the flies to come. And surely they will come. And the lizard, with its quick tongue, will swallow them. It seems to be the nature of the world. The big things live on little things, and the bigger live on the big. This is the cycle of the world of nature. And in that, there is neither order nor disorder. But we know for ourselves from time to time the sense of total harmony, and also the pain, the anxiety, the sorrow, the conflict. The cause of disorder is the everlasting becoming. To become to seek identity, the struggle to be. As long as the brain, which is so heavily conditioned, is measuring the more, the better, moving psychologically from this to that, it must inevitably bring about a sense of conflict. And this is disorder. Not only the words more, better, but the feeling, the reaction of achieving, of gaining. As long as there is this division, duality, there must be conflict. And out of this conflict is disorder. Perhaps one is aware of all this. But being negligent of this awareness, one carries on in the same way, day after day, all the days of one's life. This duality is not only verbal, but has the deeper division as the thinker and the thought, the thinker separate from himself. The thinker is put together by thought. The thinker is the past. The thinker is knowledge. And thought, too, is born out of knowledge. Actually, there's no division between the thinker and the thought. They are one inseparable unit. But thought plays a clever trick upon itself. It divides itself. Perhaps this constant division of itself, its own fragmentation, is the cause of disorder. Just to see, to realize the truth of this, that the perceiver is the perceived, ends disorder. The mockingbird has gone, and the mourning dove is there with its plaintive cry. And soon its mate joins it. They sit together on that wire, silent, motionless, but their eyes are moving, looking, watching for danger. The red-tailed hawk and the predatory birds who were there an hour or two ago have gone. Perhaps they will come back tomorrow. And so the morning ends, and the sun now is bright, and there are 1,000 shadows. The earth is quiet, and man is lost and confused. This is the very last of these recordings, made about two years before Krishnamurti died. Walking down the straight road on a lovely morning, it was spring, and the sky was extraordinarily blue. There wasn't a cloud in it, and the sun was just warm, not too hot. It felt nice. And the leaves were shining, and a sparkle was in the air. It was really a most extraordinarily beautiful morning. The high mountain was there, impenetrable, and the hills below were green and lovely. And as you walked along quietly, without much thought, you saw a dead leaf, yellow and bright red, a leaf from the autumn. How beautiful that leaf was, so simple in its death, so lively, full of the beauty and vitality of the whole tree and the summer. Strange that it had not withered. Looking at it more closely, one saw all the veins and the stem and the shape of that leaf. That leaf was all the tree. Why do human beings die so miserably, so unhappily, with the disease, old age, senility, the body shrunk, ugly? Why can't they die naturally and as beautifully as this leaf? What is wrong with us? In spite of all the doctors, medicines and hospitals, operations and all the agony of life, and the pleasures too, we don't seem to be able to die with dignity, simplicity, and with a smile. Once, walking along a lane, one heard behind one a chant, melodious, rhythmic, with the ancient strength of Sanskrit. One stopped and looked around. An eldest son, naked to his waist, was carrying a terracotta pot with a fire burning in it. He was holding it in another vessel, and behind him were two men carrying his dead father, covered with a white cloth, and they were all chanting. One knew what that chant was. One almost joined in. They went past, and one followed them. They were going down the road chanting, and the eldest son was in tears. They carried the father to the beach, where they had already collected a great pile of wood, and they laid the body on top of that heap of wood and set it on fire. It was all so natural, so extraordinarily simple. There were no flowers, there was no hearse, there were no black carriages with black horses. It was all very quiet and utterly dignified. And one looked at that leaf and 1,000 leaves of the tree. The winter brought that leaf from its mother onto that path, and it would presently die out completely and wither, be gone, carried away by the winds and lost. As you teach children mathematics, writing, reading, and all the business of acquiring knowledge, they should also be taught the great dignity of death, not as a morbid, unhappy thing that one has to face eventually, but something of daily life, the daily life of looking at the blue sky and the grasshopper on a leaf. It is part of learning as you grow teeth and have all the discomfort of childish diseases. Children have extraordinary curiosity. If you see the nature of death, you don't explain that everything. If you see the nature of death, you don't explain that everything dies, dust to dust and so on. But without any fear, you explain to them gently and make them feel that the living and the dying are one. Not at the end of one's life after 50, 60, or 90 years, but that death is like that leaf. Look at the old men and women, how decrepit, how lost, how unhappy, and how ugly they look. Is it because they have not really understood either the living or the dying? They have used life. They waste away their life with incessant conflict, which only exercises and gives strength to the self, the me, the ego. We spend our days in such varieties of conflict and unhappiness, with some joy and pleasure, drinking, smoking, late nights and work, work, work. And at the end of one's life, one faces that thing called death and is frightened of it. One thinks it can always be understood. One thinks it can always be understood, felt deeply. The child with his curiosity can be helped to understand that death is not merely the wasting of the body through disease, old age, or some unexpected accident, but that the ending of every day is also the ending of oneself every day. There's no resurrection. That is superstition, a dogmatic belief. Everything on earth, on this beautiful earth, lives, dies, comes into being and withers away. To grasp this whole movement of life requires intelligence, Not the intelligence of thought or books or knowledge, but the intelligence of love and compassion with its sensitivity. One is very certain that if the educator understands the significance of death and the dignity of it, the extraordinary simplicity of dying, understands it not intellectually but deeply, then he may be able to convey to the student, to the child, that dying, the ending, is not to be avoided. It is not something to be frightened of, for it is part of one's whole life, so that as the student, the child, grows up, he will never be frightened of the ending. If all the human beings who have lived before us, past generations upon generations, still lived on this earth, how terrible it would be. The beginning is not the ending. And one would like to help, no, that's the wrong word. One would like in education to bring death into some kind of reality, actuality. Not of someone else dying, but of each one of us, however old or young, having inevitably to face that thing. It is not a sad affair of tears, of loneliness, of separation. We kill so easily, not only the animals for one's food, but the vast unnecessary killing for amusement called sport, killing a deer because that is the season. Killing a deer is like killing your neighbor. You kill animals because you have lost touch with nature, with all the living things on this earth. You kill in wars for so many romantic, nationalistic, political ideologies. In the name of God, you have killed people. Violence and killing go together. As one looked at that dead leaf with all its beauty and color, maybe one would very deeply comprehend, be aware of what one's own death must be, not at the very end, but at the very beginning. Death isn't some horrific thing, something to be avoided, something to be postponed, but rather something to be with, day in and day out. And out of that comes an extraordinary sense of immensity. We will end here for today.